Right, so Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, really isn't the sharpest tool in the box, and in what is probably one of the single most tone-deaf, off-the-cuff comments I've ever heard in my life, I think, in light of the mess our schools and other public buildings are in, thanks to this aero bar concrete so many were built out of, she actually moaned about not getting praise for doing a good job. Good job of what? Presiding over the ministerial equivalent of taking a JCB to our schools? It's like you built schools out of Mentos and then poured Coke all over the top of them. Keegan has got caught in the same way so many politicians have been in the past by neglecting to check if they're still being recorded audially or visually after an interview, where she was being interviewed by ITV News in relation to this concrete problem. RAAC, RAAC as it's called, Reinforced Aerated Autoclaved Concrete it stands for, or concrete with air holes in it, in plain English. After saying all schools will be fixed, she thought the cameras were off and the recording devices were off as she was removing her mic. She decided suddenly spout out of nowhere, does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done an effing good job because everyone else has sat on their asses and done nothing? No signs of that? No. No, Gillian. No. There's no signs of that. Because if you think you've done an effing good job, you've got another thing coming. You are to doing a good job what Stormtroopers are to pinpoint accuracy. You are to doing a good job what Enoch Powell was to multiculturalism. You are to doing a good job what Theresa May was to strength and stability. You are to doing a good job what Keir Starmer is to lying straight in bed. I can go on all day. The fact is, you've not done a good job. You have stood there on the matter of schools and said that maintaining school buildings is a local authority issue. But they've got to go to you if they want to build anything. It isn't a local authority issue. It is absolutely a national government issue. Local authorities, besides the point, have been starved of cash for years by your government. So even if it was their responsibility, they probably wouldn't have the cash to do it anyway. Also, if Crumbling Keegan was doing such a good job, why did you apparently sign off, though she denies it, on a £34 million refurb of the Department for Education offices when schools were in need of that cash? See, there's always money to be found when they want it, but never where it's needed. Allegedly, she also hid the evidence of the dangers presented by crumbling schools in the hope it would become another government's problem. So that says a lot of their dedication to fixing things, doesn't it? She's done such a good job that she thinks she deserves thanks for that. That when all these stories of crumbling school buildings started getting news coverage, she thought she'd better launch a fact-finding mission into how many schools need help. But guess when she launched it? 8 o'clock in the evening, the night before school started to reopen on Monday. If they've even been able to, of course. But of course, Keegan is just the latest instalment of what has been a known problem for decades now. This RAAC material was used to whack up quick, cheap buildings, the intention being they'd be temporary, post-war, to get the country back on its feet quickly. Unfortunately, following the Attlee government, you can measure British administrations in different degrees of ignoring this issue of replacing these buildings with the properly built, long-lasted ones that were intended to be built thereafter. Since RAAC carried on being used into the 1990s, it definitely didn't happen, did it? Not least in schools, all contributing to this current concrete crisis. Now, it wasn't until Gordon Brown's administration came along that an attempt to genuinely look at this issue was made. Under Blair, such promises were made and reneged upon. That was his raison d'etre, wasn't it, really? But Brown had committed to building 715 new schools before he lost the election, and pretty much the minute the Tory-led coalition came in, July of 2010 as this was, Michael Gove came along and scrapped the scheme entirely, along with bidding new housing plans, new eco-towns, and the building of new leisure centres and swimming pools. Gove binned the problem off completely, just decided it got to go in the bin, austerity, we need to cut, this can go, despite knowing it was a problem. Because in the name of austerity, the cuts had to be made, and if Crumbling Keegan wants to blame someone for having been sat on their arse, perhaps Bob is a good person to start with. It was political choice to ignore this, and schools are now literally falling apart. Kids' education disrupted as 100 schools in this country are told to close already because they're now too dangerous. That is the price we now pay for constantly electing politicians who keep telling us there isn't any money. There is always bloody money. Unfortunately, there are always politicians refusing to take the action necessary and needed. So again, the problem got kicked down the road, and it didn't crop up again until the 2021 spending review, when a chap called Jonathan Slater, the then Permanent Secretary for Education within the civil service, he told the Tories that due to the state of schools by then, between 300 and 400 schools needed to be rebuilt per year because they were crumbling. And that was based on data known about since Brown's plans got binned. And it all got brought up again in data from 2018 as well. Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor at the time, and he said, no, I'm only going to supply funding to rebuild 100 schools. And then the following year, he changed his mind again and decided, no, I can only commit to funding 50 schools. Slater has gone public with this now, such as his disgust, and Sunak is also wanting thanks now for doing a good job. He's now moaning that people are blaming him for the schools collapsing, and whilst it is true it cannot solely be laid at his feet, he very much has been part of the problem. The fact is Sunak and his ilk don't care about state schools falling apart because their kids don't go to them. If you wanted further proof of just how much Sunak doesn't care about your kids and their education and the schools they go to, then how about that time in 2022, just last year, when he donated £100,000 to his own old school of his own money? Private school, of course, naturally, Winchester College. How about the time in 2018 when further reports of the state of our schools came out, when he gave $3 million to his wife's old school of Claremont McKenna in California? How about that time he donated to a local school in his own constituency of Richford a massive £10 House of Commons branded bottle of wine for a raffle? Oh, he did sign it, though, to big up the value just a little bit. Labour, of course, are having a field day with this, and completely justifiably. Their party, under Gordon Brown, were going to start to deal with this crisis. The Tories have been laid bare for their failings. Michael Gove, Rishi Sunak, Gillian Keegan, all of them have had a direct role to play in where we are today here. So, of course, the opposition party will lay into them over this. So what are they going to do to fix them instead, though? Oh, well, we can't fix them. There isn't any money. Stop saying that. That's literally what the Tories have spent 13 years saying. The schools are now falling apart. People are asking, where is our money going when they're seeing this happening? And the simple answer is, the money is there. It just has to be printed off. It's just that there is neither party has the will to tax the rich to offset that necessary spending. They can't tax us anymore. We've nothing left to give. Thangam Debonair, Starmer's new Shadow Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, she went on to Kay Burley's Sky News show and basically said, we don't know what state the economy is going to be in, so we can't commit to building the schools, to which Burley rightly told her, you can't attack the Tories for this when you offer no solutions yourselves. Starmer is so terrified of getting criticised by the Tories for daring to commit to spending on anything that he won't commit to anything. And even if he did, you couldn't trust him to keep his word on it if he did. So what would the Green Party do instead, Damo? You may be wondering at this point, if you're familiar with my content, because I quite often go down this road, and the fact I'm a Green, well, that's kind of why I do. Well, Green Party co-leader Carla Denyer, looking to take Thangam Debonair's Bristol West seat at the next general election, funnily enough, standing against her, has issued a statement saying, our education system has been left crumbling after 13 years of Tory austerity, but successive governments have known about the problems with RAAC. Our schools are not fit for purpose. As Chancellor Rishi Sunak decided to axe investment in new schools from 100 to 50, that was despite a Department for Education survey that revealed the need to build 300 to 400 schools. Now, as Prime Minister, he should reverse the decision he made. As far as what the Greens would do on this issue, and you can check out more on the Green Party policy page on its website, always a good place to look, all their policies all in one place, that is to work towards having smaller schools, having smaller class size, because smaller class sizes, better overall results. They want to aim towards an average of 20 kids per class and a maximum of 700 kids per school at secondary levels, with larger schools than that being broken down into smaller communities within the same building, so you get the same effect. The local authorities would have the power again to build new schools as they need of appropriate size. Academies and free schools, which Gove championed at the expense of building and repairing all the mainstream schools at the time the Tories came in, will be phased into local authority control again, and no more will be built because they are not democratic institutions. They're businesses, basically. It's privatised education. Same goes for grammar schools, which are elitist. And as for private schools, they can kiss goodbye to the ridiculous charade of having charitable status and will be treated as businesses as well. School funding will be based on need, and a lot of that right now needs to go into building and repair. The Tories are full of excuses. Labour won't commit to fixing something which just needs to be fucking fixed. So if you need a school to send your kids to that won't come crashing down on their heads, don't vote for the blue Tories and don't vote for the red ones. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Don't forget to drop a comment on this. Have your say on the conversation. Are you raging about this like I am? I sincerely hope so. Tell me all about it. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where I covered the backstory of RAAC and how it got to this point in more detail, and the price of Tory tough decisions as we're now paying. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.